clever ways, because my father would never admit that his mother was not going to make it. Never. So my generation had to bear that as the reality and let my father be in his bubble. But then we would go behind and clean things up and make sure the staff knew, we do understand, but you need to understand that we're not going to let our dad cave in. We're protecting him, we're taking care of the grandma, and he only wants to write checks, okay? Let him write a check. The other thing we experience is, as Indian families, and I met a few in the front row who are the A students, by the way, because they sit in the front. The back row, I think you must be Catholics. Yeah. Many of the resources that we need to take care of our elders are not available in the frontier areas of Montana, the rural areas of Montana. So we share that as Montanans. We have to sometimes move our elders away from our home community so that they can get the services they need in some of the larger towns. So that's an issue that natives have to endure. So we're coming from an all Indian or a majority Indian community to one that is the dominant society, has their own ways. So we're coming into facilities that are not accustomed to dealing with the Indian family. So you'll see some of these things perhaps in your own facility. One easy way to make your facility welcoming to a native clientele is to take a look at your artwork and maybe increase native art in the walls of your facility and in your patients' rooms. In the clinical setting, our nuclear families of about 50 will all fit in an 8x10 room. I've done it, I know. And you can expect anytime you get 3 Indian women together, there'll be at least 12 kids. That's just the rule of thumb. And they're with us at all times, 24/7. You visit a family that's in a vigil at 2 a.m. in the morning, and there'll be 4- and 5-year-olds running around like maniacs. That's just the way that it is. We gather, and that's, there's no way to break that. As we evolve from our traditional cultures of the teepee buffalo days into the modern world, that strong family connection is part of that evolution, that it doesn't matter that we're not gathering in a teepee, we're not gathering in Little Hut House on the prairie, that we're gathering in St. Vincent's or Billings Clinic in an 8x10 patient room. We're still going to gather, and that's important to us. So that vigil never ends. You'll see aunties coming in with the biggest crock pot that Walmart could ever find and plugging it into the outlets in your waiting rooms. Young mothers bringing a whole stack of blankets and making a little pallet on the floor for the infants because they're camping and they're not leaving. So that, instead of viewing that as an obstacle, turn it around and make that your resource, because you can derive a lot of assistance from that family. So the cast of characters are going to be decision makers, leaders, providers, babysitters, someone who does the talking. Don't get confused that the person who does the talking is also the person who does the decision making. That doesn't necessarily have to be, particularly in cultures of the Great Plains region. It's embedded in our culture that having the authority to speak in public is a right. And you're chosen for that based on your ability to be a good public speaker. That's a value in our culture dating back to long, long ago before horses, and we maintain that today. So although in my working life I do presentations like this a lot, but in my cultural life I don't ever speak publicly. I have a brother who was given that right to be the public speaker, and I stand next to him and I whisper everything I want him to say in his ear. I told you, women are in charge. If you're feeling really overwhelmed by the number of Indian people that are coming to be with the patient that you're serving, it's probably because your facility wasn't designed for the nuclear family of 50. So in that setting, it's important to do your one-to-one relationship building. And in the native country, we always remember each other's tribe. And I know I get asked a lot, am I supposed to say American Indian or Native American? And I say you're supposed to say the name of the tribe of the person. But when you're talking about Indian people collectively, I prefer American Indians. When you're talking about the subjects that we teach in school, particularly in college, it's Native American studies. It makes no sense. So I understand why everybody is confused. But in rules of technical writing, just be consistent on the term that you're going to use. But in your one-to-one relationship building, it's common that we always know each other's tribes. In your world, I think that you're used to knowing what kind of work people do. You know, the chief of police lives down the road from us, and the guy next door, he's a teacher at the local elementary school. You remember stuff like that about your neighbors in your world. In Indian country, we remember what tribes we are and what communities we might originally be from. I haven't lived on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation for over 30 years because I've been in college and I've been in the world of work. But that is always part of my identity. That's where I came from. And the elders remind me of that often. When I worked for Governor Schweitzer, the Cheyennes said, "We claim her, we taught her everything she knows." The Crow tribe claimed me because that's where I'm enrolled and that's where I descended from. So in this one-to-one relationship building, it's very common the way natives greet each other is to ask about others in your family, because family connections are so important. How are you doing? You know, where you been? How's so-and-so? And then you share a little bit about you, because they'll reciprocate and they'll ask you, well, what have you been doing? And how is your grandparents, or how are your parents? And then we all like to do this thing. I know so-and-so, and do you know so-and-so? And they, yeah, well, are you related to da-da-da-da? And we do this whole miniature kind of genealogy, and that is part of the information that you store about that person. And when you familiarize yourself at a personal level like that, then that's the open door to start talking about other issues. And I know that in the medical field you can sometimes get very busy and you have lots of people that you have to tend to. But it's important to capture some of that information. Some people are really good at that. That's their natural ability to just be a people person. I always advocate that our administrators should really study those people in their organization that have that skill and try to capture what it is that they're doing that's so effective that all kinds of information is revealed. Information that might be important to how you might plan the care of that individual in your facility. Do you have a document in that patient's file that collected all the information that that real fun, gregarious employee was able to get from their interview with a client? It's also important to take a minute to talk about the verbal and the nonverbal expressions, because that can be awkward for people when you don't know what the protocols are from another culture. In the native world, silence is comfortable. It's okay to be quiet and to think and contemplate. And it's okay to give people that space to do that. In the dominant society, we just click along, and I better click along in this presentation or I'm going to run out of time. Another thing you might experience is the gentleness of a handshake. Not always, but sometimes. Being Indian is not one track, one set of definition criteria. Being Indian can be everything on a gradient scale from the color of black and as it fades out to totally white. You can be anywhere along that color scale and still be Indian. It's very personal, and it reflects on the family that you come from. But in some families, they will still have a very soft handshake. And it has nothing to do with representing the strength of their character or their confidence. It has everything to do with their spirit has touched your spirit. And that does not have to be expressed by a strong grip. So even men might do that. As soon as I say that, the next Indian man you shake hands with is going to rip your arm off. I advocate for respectful and comfortable eye contact. There's kind of a myth out there that Indians don't like eye contact. It's a way that we have learned to have privacy in large groups. Even in the state capitol, when people were giving testimony in committee hearings about issues that were important, about elders, about the quality of water on their reservations, the lack of medical health care. And they would get emotionally upset in the telling of their personal story. And in order to respect that, they were giving us the wealth of their emotion. All the Indian people would put their eyes down and not look that person in the eye. That's respect. To respect that they are having that moment, and we're supporting them by not giving them a direct eye contact. Okay? So in your one-to-one relationship building with a client, mirror what your client is giving you. Because the dynamic is already set that you have authority by your position in providing services that the family needs. That goes without saying. So a family member may not be giving you direct eye contact because of the position that you hold. So don't take that as that it's personal. Try to turn that around and look at it as a form of respect that may have been taught to them within their families. Building friendly dialogue is important. We talked about that, kind of chit-chat about your family member. And be prepared that you are speaking, you could be speaking to someone whose first language is not English, and that they are going to have an accent. An accent, if I had the French accent, I could say my name as beautifully as our French friend at the back of the room. But that accent is important to their proper pronunciation of the words in their own language, and it carries over into English. When you are taught to speak English by someone whose first language is not English, you also learn to speak English with an accent. So you're going to see some of that. I said that we're an evolving live culture. We learn to use English words that have no meaning to the way that you understand the word. I hang a roach in my living room. Do any of you hang a roach in your living room? Law enforcement loves that. In my world, a roach is the headdress that our young men wear on the top of their heads. So you can see that we might have slang that you won't understand. This is my family at Thanksgiving. And the reason why my Italian husband and I are no longer together. This is called a genogram, and it's used by social workers a lot. And it might help medical people to use a genogram when you're working with a Native family. This one is about me in the middle and my immediate family nuclear family of 50. And then the extended family, all my clan relatives and distant cousins. So I kind of put the boxes around to give some idea of the categories of relationships that make me who I am and that support me as a person walking on this earth. Sometimes you encounter individuals, and this family structure can be disrupted by dysfunctions of alcohol, drugs, divorce, military